I wanted to share with you a story that I heard this morning that sort of had me excited when I heard it. It's about a lady, and she was driving, and it was just a little bit west of here, and she was heading on down the highway. And pretty desolate piece of highway. She hadn't passed anybody in a really long time, but she passed a hitchhiker. She didn't think anything about it, drove a little bit farther, and all of a sudden she felt like she was supposed to pick up that hitchhiker. So she goes back, and she had never done this before, and stopped and picked this man up. The man got in the car. They drove just a little bit farther, and the man never said a word. All of a sudden, still in the middle of nowhere, the man said, "Stop, I need to get out." She stopped the car. He got out. She thought, well, this was odd. Puts the car in gear, but then the man taps on the window. She looks over to him and rolls down the window to see what he has to say. And he says this: "Gabriel's lips are on the trumpet." She stopped and paused for a moment, thought this is very odd, but then she realized what he meant. And she got extremely excited and wanted to ask him more about it. So she gets out of her car and looks around, and even though there's a very large desolate place, the man had disappeared. Now, this got me really excited because we all know what it means for Gabriel's lips to be on the trumpet. That means Jesus is coming soon. But the only problem with this is I made it all up. But you got excited, didn't you? Yeah, it's amazing what we can do to rile people up spiritually when it doesn't even have any truth to it at all. And this happens a lot. You know, as a matter of fact, in 2 Timothy, Paul says this to Timothy. He says, "There's a time coming when people will no longer listen for sound and wholesome teaching. They will follow their own desires and will look for teachers who will tell them what their itching ears want to hear. They will reject the truth and chase after myths." You know, the truth is all of us have itching ears to some degree. I mean, wanting Jesus to come back and wanting to know when, that's a good thing. I mean, in the book of James, it tells us we need to be eager about him coming back. We need to be patient about him coming back. But when we add lies to that, that's sort of what is making our ears itch. And this happens all the time. You know, there are false teachers, and they're easy to point out here, there, and yonder, but there are other false teachers that are a little bit harder to. As a matter of fact, we listen to them, it sounds good to us, so we sort of follow along. You know, I was just talking with some folks yesterday about some teachings that are going on in churches in America that are starting to really gain some popularity, and they sound great, other than the fact they're not biblical. So I have 3 things to help you when these things come along, these tabloid Christian ideas, to discern if they're true or they're not. The first thing is this: know what you believe. You know, this seems to be understandable that everyone would know what they believe, but the truth is when we start sitting down and thinking about what we believe, it's sort of hard to put on paper. So I encourage you to do that. Know what you believe. I mean, there are people that have been in churches all around the U.S. and been in that same church for years and years and years, but can't articulate exactly what they believe. That is the first step in discerning truth from fiction. But then number 2, understand why you believe it. Go to Scripture and understand, wait, why do I believe that Jesus is God? Why do I believe in the Trinity? Why do I believe that I'm lost and I can't fix myself? Why do I believe that Jesus is the only way to heaven? You know, these are some things that most Christians believe, but a lot of people don't know why they believe it. So I encourage you to not only to know what you believe and write it down, but go and search out why you believe that. You know, maybe you've got some ideas out there that are just not biblical, that you can kick out of your ideology. But the truth is we have to know and we have to dig. But then thirdly, I encourage you to search Scripture. You know, the Bereans in the book of Acts were really patted on the back for searching out after hearing from Paul, and he was bringing this gospel to them, and they listened intently, but then they went back and searched Scripture to see if it's true. The same thing should go with us. You know, maybe we hear something that sounds great. I mean, Jesus coming back is a truth, but somebody on the side of a road saying that Gabriel's getting ready to blow the trumpet just isn't. We needed to search Scripture, and if we did, guess what we'd learn? Nobody knows the day. Nobody knows the hour. So I encourage you, search Scripture to see if what you're believing is true, if what people are saying is true, if the new idea on the block is biblical. Because a lot of times we find out, even though it has good intentions, it's just not truth. And when it's not truth, it's not taking us closer to God. It's moving us away from God. 3 things. Number 1, write down what you believe. Number 2, try to understand and search why you actually believe those things. Is it really in the Bible? If so, find it, write down the scripture. It'll help you to be able to combat those things. But number 3, search scripture. If you hear something that sounds great, but you're not 100% sure is in the Bible, because I guarantee Jesus is never going to lead you astray. And how's Jesus revealed? In his word. You've got to know his word to be able to stay on the straight and narrow.